Hello everyone. Thank you very much for attending my PhD defense. I'm Pierre Gros, and today I will present my thesis work, which is about challenges of native Android applications, obfuscation, and vulnerabilities. This work has been advised by Valérie Viet-Triemtong, Jean-François Lalande, and Pierre Vilquet, and has been conducted inside the team CIDRE. If you look at security newspaper, you may have noticed that almost every week, or at least every 2 or 3 weeks, new malicious applications and new vulnerabilities are found on Android. So in newspaper, you can see a lot of malwares and vulnerabilities that are found on Android, and that shows that Android is a system that is particularly targeted by malicious operators. In order to tackle this phenomenon, researchers have two goals. First, they try to detect malicious or vulnerable applications in order to remove them from stores, that is, to remove them from the place where users can download it. However, as we can see in the news, the removing them from stores is not enough because, as we can see in the news, users will eventually install these malicious applications. That is why researchers also try to understand the behavior of this malicious application in order to be able to evaluate the damage that the application have done and to be able to revert this damage. In this thesis, we have focused on detecting vulnerability inside Android application source code. And also, we have focused on understanding how application behaves in a specific context, that is the obfuscation context. So what is obfuscation? Obfuscation is the code analysis countermeasures. That means obfuscation is the process of modifying an application or an executable, modifying an application to make it harder to analyze without modifying its behavior. So to understand how to analyze an obfuscated application, we have first to understand what is an Android application. An Android application is an APK file, an archive file, that contains some bytecode that has been obtained from Java or Kotlin. This APK file, the application, is installed from markets, classically Google Play Store. And when it is installed on the smartphone, a specific Android library called the runtime library is in charge of executing it. So it executes the bytecode that is inside the application, and also it manages, it accesses the bytecode data that are stored on a specific memory area that is called the heap. So analyzing bytecode, bytecode inside the application is already widely done by researchers. Indeed, researchers already know how to build information flow of a bytecode application, how to maximize the code coverage of a dynamic during a dynamic analysis of an application. They also know how to study to watch the communication interface between several applications, and also they know how to study obfuscated bytecode, to study obfuscated applications that contains bytecode. However, since 2014, around 2014, a new type of application has raised. This new type is called native applications. A native applications can be called native if it contains some shared libraries. These shared libraries are classical Linux shared objects, and they contain assembly code that has been obtained from C++. So when the shared library is installed on the smartphone inside the APK, the shared library, because it is written in assembly code, can directly run on the smartphone. Then, if the shared library wants to access the bytecode data or to access to call bytecode methods, Android gives to the application a dedicated interface called JNI, which stands for Java Native Interface. And using this interface, the shared library can perform the operations. An Android applications can also be called native if it contains some quick code. Actually, the runtime proposes features that proposes for optimization purposes, to compile the bytecode into assembly code that is named quick code, and when compiling the application bytecode, the APK file is transformed into an OAT file. And similarly to shared library, quick code that contains assembly code can be executed directly on the smartphone. And since it has been compiled by the runtime, the JNI features are already present inside quick code, so the quick code can directly access the heap or call some bytecode methods. So the presence of native code introduces new issues. First, the analysis that we were able to conduct on bytecode have to be adapted. So we can see that in the state of the art, new flow analyzers have been developed to analyze the interface, to analyze the bytecode and native code. Same for instrumentation systems. Also, the introduction of native code has introduced new vulnerabilities and new obfuscation techniques. These techniques are, in fact, the vulnerabilities and the obfuscation techniques that are already known for classical desktop executable, for classical assembly executable. Thus, we can see that bytecode analysis technique have been adapted to native world. We can see that native vulnerability and obfuscation techniques has been adapted to bytecode world. But we can ask ourselves how the interaction of these two worlds, how the interaction between native code and bytecode can be used to bypass existing security methods. And thus, if such methods are discovered, how resulting threats could be mitigated. So answering this question, and this is what we have done during this thesis, answering this question is equivalent to reducing the exploitation window. Actually, when a new malicious technique is discovered by malicious operators, Android ecosystem becomes exploitable. And until a corresponding countermeasure is found, Android ecosystem remains exploitable. So by discovering new malicious technique, we increase T1. That means that we increase the time malicious operators will take to find new malicious techniques. And by proposing directly corresponding countermeasures, we decrease T2. That means that we narrow the exploitable window. During this thesis, we have treated two types of techniques. First, and that will be the subject of this presentation, we have treated obfuscation techniques, but we have also worked on vulnerability techniques, which due to time constraint are not presented here today. So to show how obfuscation techniques, to show the obfuscation techniques and the countermeasure we have proposed during this thesis, I'm going to use during all this presentation the same running example that is called Simple Test Pin. This running example is an application that checks if an entered pin is equal to 1337. And to realize this check, the application uses a two-step algorithm. First, the entered pin is added to 7331. And then in a second time, the obtained pin, the entered pin plus 7331, is then in a second step, the application checks that the new pin XOR OX2323 is equal to OX2FF. And this is strictly equivalent to checking if the pin is 1337. To do this, this application works on two fields: validated, that will be set to true or false whether the check is true or false, and pin and the pin field that will contain the effective pin value. It will also, and each steps will be implemented in one method. So the addition will be put into the setPin method, and the checks will be implemented in the test method. And on this example, we are going to have two objectives. First, we are going to place ourselves as a developer, and we are going to try to hide the correct pin. So we are going to obfuscate these applications to hide the pin. And in second step, we are going to place at the opposite role, that is the analyst side, and we are going to try to retrieve the correct pin. That means we are going to analyze the obfuscated application. Okay, so first we are going to see, I'm going to present you the obfuscation techniques that we have proposed during this thesis. And then I'm going to present you what's inside. That is a tool that we have proposed during this thesis to analyze application obfuscating Android applications. So first, directive access, DHA. If you look at how shared library can access Java data, you can notice that shared library are forced to use JNI, are forced to use Java Native Interface. Thus, state-of-the-art tools are already are aware of this fact, and thus they easily watch this interface. That means they are able to hook this interface during a dynamic analysis, or they have a static representation of what the JNI can do. So here, what we propose to bypass this tool is to directly, from the shared library, access to the heap, to directly access, to direct. We have named this technique direct heap access. I'm sorry. Okay, so we have used DHA to obfuscate the first method of our running example, the method that adds a value to the pin. Since this method is intended for C++, for shared library, we have built this method in C++. So here we can see that we have the prototype of the method, and that this prototype receives as argument the calling object that is here obj. Using this handle on the calling object, we can retrieve the effective object address. Then we can retrieve the effective field address, and using this field address, we can directly write this value. We can directly perform a DHA. So here we are write the value, the entered pin into the field, and then we can read again and add the value expected by the algorithm. So we wondered to know if DHA was already used by malicious developers. So we've searched for DHA usage in the wild. We've searched into two datasets, Androzu, which is a very large dataset, and AMD, which is a dataset that contains only malicious applications. And we've seen that most more than half of applications already use DHA. However, since DHA is used both in goodware and malwares, DHA usage does not allow us to discriminate between goodware and malware. So we've investigated more to determine what was the purpose of such DHA, and by looking at the classes and fields accessed, we were able to point out that DHA is used for optimization purposes, and we did not find any malicious usage. But this shows that developers already know how to use DHA and that we should really care of future malicious DHA usage. Okay, so we've seen direct heap access, DHA. This is a technique that targets Java data that bypassing existing tool, and that is already used in the wild. We are now going to see bytecode free OAT, BFO, that targets not the Java data, but the Java code. So we've made two observations. First, quick code is executed regardless of the associated bytecode. That means the runtime never executes bytecode if there is some quick code, even if the bytecode is different. Second observation, bytecode analysis tool, because bytecode is simpler to analyze, prefer to analyze bytecode. And thus, no tools work on OIT. I mean, no tools work directly on quick code. So here we propose to change the bytecode that is inside the obfuscate, the OIT, in order to fool all analysis tool that will falsely, wrongly analyze the bytecode. This obfuscation technique has one limitation because OAT file cannot be shipped on a classical market. For example, Google Play Store can only receive APK. So only smartphone constructors, firmwares that ship indeed OAT file can use this method. So we've used BFO to obfuscate the second method of our running example. That is the method that performs the check. So here we simply have to write the code in Java. As you can see, we have write the application code in Java. We check if the pin is negative. We throw a corresponding exception, and then we update accordingly the validated field according to the result of the checks. And then using this code, we compile the Java code into bytecode. We compile the bytecode into quick code, and we remove the bytecode. So we also wonder to see if firmwares already use this obfuscation technique. So we've created a small data set that contains 17 firmwares that comes from 6 different brands, and we did not find any BFO usage, but still we have shown that BFO can be effectively used, and so we should really care of future BFO usage. So we have seen DHA, and we have now seen bytecode free OAT BFO that targets the Java code that is handled by any tool and not used in the wild. So now we have seen how to obfuscate our application. We are now going to try to analyze. We are now going to try to analyze the obfuscated applications. So we have some applications that are developed in Java. That means their behavior are Java. And these applications are obfuscated using native code. Moreover, we also know that obfuscation, such as packing, prevent us to statically analyze the applications. Here, our objective is not to retrieve the original code of the application. It's not to understand some low-level native behavior, such as we have called syscall 11, and then a memory page has been allocated. No, here we want to build a tool that is able to retrieve the Java behavior of an obfuscated application. So we have built such a tool. What's inside? It takes as input the obfuscated application, and it outputs the Java graph, the control flow graph of Java behaviors that can be performed by the application. Java behaviors are actually all the high-level behaviors that can be performed by bytecode opcode. So we've listed all the Java behaviors that can be performed by the bytecode opcode, and these behaviors are listed exhaustively here. So to recover this Java behavior CFG, we are going to work in two steps. First, since we can't statically analyze the applications, we are going to realize a dynamic trace of this application. That means we are going to log all the Java behaviors performed by the application during an execution. Then, since the dynamic analysis is inherently incomplete, we are going to enhance the information obtained during the dynamic analysis using a symbolic analysis. That is the second step. Okay, so first step, the dynamic trace. To perform the logging of all Java behaviors, we have modified the Android runtime itself to add some probes at every place a Java behavior can happen. And thus, when we install an application on this modified runtime, we can log and we can see all Java actions that the application performed during an execution. So to show you what we can obtain using the dynamic analysis, I will of course reuse the running example. And so we are at the place of analyst. We don't know what is the correct pin and we want to obtain it. So we have run the application and we have entered first a malformed pin that is -321, and then an incorrect pin that is 123. And so we've obtained for the first method, the method that adds a value, this graph. So in this graph, each node represents a Java behavior that the application can perform. In each node, you can see two lines because the method has been executed 2 times. So we have the behavior that have happened at each execution. And the arrow represents the flow between the different behaviors. Okay, so here in this graph, we can see that we have retrieved that the setPin method has been called using the pin we entered. And then we have partially recovered the HA. Indeed, we have recovered the write and the read that have been made in a direct heap access way. However, we recover only partially since we are missing some flow. Here, in the last write, we can see that 7010 has been written inside the field pin, but we don't know where those come from, this value. For the second method, that was obfuscating using BFO, we are also able to recover BFO. As we can see here, we have catch that read has happened and that sometimes an exception is thrown and sometimes false is written into the field validated. However, we miss some conditions. We don't know when we are going to throw an exception or when we are going to set validated to false. And also, we have missed a path, that is the path where validated is set to true. So using our modifier at runtime, we are able to automatically retrieve Java behaviors performed by obfuscated applications. However, we miss three elements, that is data flow between behaviors, conditions expressions, and non-executed passes. To retrieve these missing elements, we have built an automatic symbolic analysis. This automatic symbolic analysis takes as input the native code that is indeed analyzed and the Java graph that has been outputted during the first step. And the symbolic analysis outputs conditions, passes, and data flows. However, this symbolic analysis is not a classical symbolic analysis, since it is driven by the Java graph values. So, a classical symbolic analysis consists in running symbolically some code. That is, we have, during the execution, we have a symbolic engine that maintains a symbolic state composed of sigma, that is a mapping between registers and symbols, and p, that is that holds conditions that need to be satisfied in order to reach the current state, the described state. So when an instruction that modifies a register is executed, sigma is updated accordingly. And when a branching, a conditional instruction is executed, two states are created with different p-value, whether the condition is true or false. There is mainly two limitations to this kind of symbolic analysis. First, when we reach a branching condition, we have to check if the condition is set or not, and this is very time-consuming. Constraint solving are very time-consuming, and also if a lot of branching instructions are reached, a lot of states are created, and this is called path explosions. So here, what we propose is an analysis trace-driven. That means we are going to conduct classical symbolic analysis plus on modification instructions, on instruction that modifies register, we are going to manage the symbols accordingly to the Java behaviors value. And on branching instructions, we are going to first log the condition expression, since this is one of the elements that we are lacking. And then we are going to replace the symbol values by the values we obtained during the trace in order to select the correct the branch that has been executed during the dynamic analysis. And using this last step, we now don't have to call a SAT solver, and we always maintain only one state, so we solve a classical limitations. So to show you how this trace-driven symbolic analysis works, I'm going to use a tiny example. So let's imagine that we have analyzed the assembly code that is on the left side of the slide. And by analyzing this assembly code, we've obtained, using what's inside, the graph that is at the right side of the slide. So this assembly code contains 5 instructions. The first one corresponds to loading the value stored at the address OX424242 into the register X1. Then the second instruction subtract 3 to the register X1. The third instruction is a conditional instruction. That means if the subtraction is equal to 0, the fourth instruction is executed. And if the subtraction is different from 0, the fifth, the last instruction, is executed. The fourth instruction corresponds to calling a function, and the last one corresponds to storing x1 at the address OX232323. So we've analyzed this small code and we've obtained the graph. The graph tells us that during the dynamic analysis, we've detected, what's inside has detected that the first instruction corresponds to reading a field named field 42, and that during this read, the value was 1337, okay? Then the executions has continued, and we have reached the fifth instruction that corresponds to a write that happened on the field 23, and the value and the return value is 1334. So we conduct the symbolic analysis on the assembly code. We start by the first instruction, since it corresponds to a symbol, to a Java behavior. We can manage its symbol accordingly. That means we can say the symbolic analysis automatically says that x1 corresponds to field 42. Then we can continue. X1 is subtracted by 3, and then we arrive to the conditional instructions. Then two states should be created, so the symbolic analysis automatically detects that we've missed during the execution a pass, and so it can indicate on the graph that there is a non-executed pass. Then we can log the condition expressions on branching instructions. And finally, we can replace the value, the symbolic value, by the value we obtained during the dynamic trace. And so here we can say that the left, the state at the left is the correct state, since the subtraction is different from 0.
And so the symbolic analysis jumps to the instruction 5. When jumping, only the symbolic state that corresponds to the taken path is kept, and the symbolic value f42, that has been previously replaced, is restored. Then, the fifth instruction is executed. Since it corresponds to a Java behavior, the symbolic analysis manages it and tells that the return value corresponds to f42 minus 3. The last instruction has been analyzed. The symbolic analysis is over. Thanks to this automatic symbolic analysis, we have been able to retrieve data flows, condition expressions, and missing paths.
So we've run this symbolic analysis on our on the simple test bin methods. And for the first one, we obtained this graph. We can see that here we have indeed retrieved in the last write the addition that has happened. So we have retrieved this part of the algorithm. So DHA has been transparently recovered. And for the second one, same, we can see that we have recovered the conditions. We know that the exception is thrown when the pin is negative, when it is lower than 7331. And we've also retrieved the checks that should be verified in order to validate the new pin, to validate the pin value. Okay, so using what's inside, we were able to retrieve the application algorithm automatically. However, this analysis has a high cost. To assess this cost, we've made 3 AES implementation. The first one is only on bytecode. The second one performs a lot of DHA, and the last one is only in C, but does not interact with the bytecode. And we can see that we have a huge overhead when we recover a lot of behavior, which is expected. So we've conducted several analyses using what's inside. First, we have extensively tested that it can retrieve all Java behaviors. So for each behavior, we have made several tests with all the primitive types of Java, and each state is declined under several versions that correspond to several obfuscation techniques. We've also benchmarked the application, just as I have just said. And finally, we are now looking for real-world malicious applications that perform DHA in order to show perfectly the contribution of what's inside on a real malicious applications. So during this presentation, I've presented you two new obfuscation techniques that works on Java bytecode and that use native code. I've also presented you what's inside an hybrid analysis framework that is able to analyze applications, obfuscated Android applications. Due to time constraint, I have not mentioned that we have also detected we have also proposed detection method of presented obfuscation techniques. And finally, we have also designed and implemented a new detection method for native vulnerability that correspond to forgetting the transient keyword. And this has been accepted last week at the security track of ACM-SAC conference. So during this thesis, we have seen that the interaction between native and Java world are problematic. Some people have already tried to tackle this problem by enforcing the usage of JNI. However, this has drawbacks. First, it is not backward compatible with previous applications, and it does not solve vulnerabilities that are inside JNI, inside the interface, the enforced interface. So here I think that we should not enforce JNI, but we should rather modify JNI. And by modifying, I think that we should mimic the way a web browser implements the interaction between JavaScript and WebAssembly. JavaScript is a high-level language that could be compared to Java, and WebAssembly is a low-level language that is near from assembly, from C++. And in web browser implementation, the web browser does not, as Android, allocate Java and C++ in the same level, but the web browser allocates JavaScript that itself allocates the WebAssembly. And this would allow us to easier analyze the interaction, since it is easier to analyze the high-level language, here JavaScript. And also this will allow us, modifying in this way will allow us an easy backward compatibility by creating a small bootstrap. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm now ready for your question.